Great Monday. Welcome to the Fully Human Connections podcast. I'm your host, King, and I'm joined by my co-host, Reggie. How you doing today, Reggie?
I'm doing real well, King. Always good to see you on a Monday, not a Wednesday anymore.
Absolutely. Still trying to get used to that mentally in my mind. You get put things on automatic or autopilot. You just move and I move with the unintentional attitude. Today was Wednesday because when I'm used to seeing your face, I think it's a Wednesday. But I get used to it being a Monday as well. So either way, I'm happy to see you. So
Yeah.
as an excellent segue into the gratitude moment. So I'll lead it off with what I'm grateful for: my life, my health, my ability to see, hear, walk, talk, stand, breathe, and have a sound mind. I'm grateful for another 24 hours to pursue my purpose in life. Grateful for mother who's still alive, still who has sound mind, and I cooked for her this weekend, Sunday. And she had. I'm sharing this story because it's a lesson in it. As I was, she told me she wants some cream corn, and she had ordered it from Omaha Steaks. And I was like, "You ordered cream corn from Omaha Steaks? Yeah, it's in the freezer." So I grabbed out the freezer and I'm looking at the instructions of it. I never prepared cream corn like that before. So the instructions said just take it out of the box. It comes in kind of a oven safe plate. Put it in the oven, for on 360, 375 for 25 minutes, and then change it after 15 minutes. So I did that. And then, long story short, after the 25 minutes, I go to the oven to grab it out. And I got, two pot holders and to keep my hands from burning. So I grab it from both sides. So I'm pulling out the oven, and the weight of the container just flipped it over. So a bunch of hot cream corn just spilled all in the stove and all on the floor. It just really made as much as a mess it could possibly be because it's cream corn, not just regular corn. So I had to try to clean out the oven while it's still hot to make sure it doesn't stick. Because if it sticks, it's going to burn. It took me a whole hour. So but my goal of sharing the story is that what I've learned or what I'm working towards doing on my path to become more fully human is no matter what happens to me, I'm always going to think about what the lesson is and why it's happening, as opposed to take the victim role and say, why is this happening to me? I can't believe this happened to me right now in the middle, et cetera, et cetera. So I stayed with that. It took me an hour to clean it all up fully and everything else. But I just wanted to share that that's what I put myself on the path of becoming more fully human, is to always ask the question, because I really believe that life is not about what happens to you, but how we respond to what happens to us. So that's just a lesson of me putting that thought process into action, into implementing that thought process, I should say.
Yeah, beautiful. I have to ask the question. So, what about your mom's desire for cream corn?
Well, fortunately, she had some frozen roasted corn in the freezer, so I was able to get that and make that, and said that's even better. So
Okay.
it worked out well.
All right. Good. Good. Yeah. I appreciate your sharing that. So, my standard gratitudes, and I do have them every day, and it's indoor plumbing, a refrigerator and a freezer, with food that's for the most part fresh. I'm just those two things. I'm just really grateful for. Um, More specifically and more recently, I was with a group of folks since Friday. I was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We all met 23 years ago at a gathering of people who had enacted a vision quest, where you go off into the wilderness for 3 or 4 days without food, and there's a whole practice behind that. And we none of us knew each other but we found out there were a bunch of us who had done that type thing on the East Coast of the United States. So we gathered down in Virginia back in 2000, and there's a nucleus of us, about 12 of us, who have been doing it ever since. The initial groups were about 60 some odd people. But so I was with about 12 of these folks, over the weekend. It's a real grounding kind of situation, where we have certain things in common that we can talk about, because we did that Vision Quest almost a quarter of a century ago. And the irony, the really funny thing is, and very real thing is, we're all 23, 24 years older than when we met. So the range over the weekend was the oldest person is 88 now, and the youngest is 47. And so we're all very attuned to how we've shifted over the years. But I'm just grateful for, friends in general, and this particular group of people with whom I've shared and who have shared with me some of the most intimate, important, happy and sad moments in our lives for the last quarter century. And so I'm grateful for that. And as you and I were speaking just before we got on, one of the people at the gathering was a woman who I contacted back earlier in 2023 because I wanted to send you something, something fresh from Baltimore, and I didn't know where to get it. And so she lives down there, and so she was the one who told me how to get some fresh food to you because I wanted to give you a gift. So she was part of that crew too, as we said. Yeah.
A great story. It's definitely something that it's wonderful to hear stories like that where folks have the ability to get together with like-minded individuals, especially ones that they've gotten together with previously over, 2 decades ago. And I was really listening to the age range difference. You said one person was 47 now, and another person is 88 now.
Yeah.
That's a 40 year difference just in that. So I'm sure that they should have had some very interesting conversations to talk about kind of where they see their lives at right now, because, I know being now 54, I know where my thought process was at 40, 47, particularly compared to when I was 20. And to be able to talk to someone who's 88 and, just really gain that wisdom would be a great conversation.
Yeah. And just to put and bring this full circle, the guy who's 88, we actually use his home for gathering. It's has enough space, and there's actually a little bit of land on it. So if anybody wants to camp outside, they can actually camp, but with air beds and sofas and a few other accoutrements, we're able to put 12 people, in the general vicinity of the house. I always joke, as long as the kitchen's working in the bathroom, I'm good. But he's the 88-year-old, and for me, he's a really good friend. We stay in touch throughout over the years, but he's an exemplar for how to be 88. Like if you and I were somewhere and he walked in, and I didn't tell you who he was, you might think he was, in his early 70s, maybe mid 70s. But he's sound mind, a little bit slower than he used to be, but just a really grounded, experienced human being who's very loving and kind and wise. So he's kind of a good friend, but also I'm saying, all right, if he can do it, I can do it. 88's a possibility, and beyond. So
that's a great story. I love those, to be 88 and have someone use those characteristics to define me as kind, wise, and loving. That's an honor, within itself, for sure.
Yeah.
So definitely a great story. And you said that was a whole weekend that you all were together?
Yeah, Friday, Saturday. Well, we convened for dinner on Friday, got there late afternoon, all day Saturday, and then we leave. Some people stay for lunch. I'm one of the people who lives furthest away, so I grabbed some food and hit the road. And I actually get to spend time with him. I get down a day early, so I got to his house in the morning of Thursday. So he and I got some private time, and we have, and we're goofballs together. It's like we play a lot. We love each other enough where there's a lot of humor and seriousness, and I really cherish that. So I get in before everybody else does, just to be able to play with him and kind of help him get the house ready too. Because as much as he's able, he is 88, and there's certain things it's better to have 4 hands on rather than just 2. So.
Absolutely. A wonderful story. Gratitude for sharing. I forgot to ask you as well, what's your spiritual energy level number?
Yeah, mine's a 10, and today I would say I'm choosing it, but I don't have to. Today it's just there, and I'm good to go. And I'm even though I know it's a choice this morning, I really don't have to choose. That's where it is.
Excellent. Well, I concur with you. I'm a 10 as well. I tell you, every time I wake up and I can see and hear and all the things I said in my gratitude statement, I'm a 10. Because I see so many people, I know people my age I grew up with who don't have the capability. They can see and hear, but they're moving much slower. Their body's in a lot of pain. So for me to get up and not have pain that's dominating my first thought is what pain I'm in or what part of my body is aching, it just puts me at a 10. So
Yeah.
sets my mood for my day for sure.
Yeah, good. Love to hear that.
All right. So it's time for you to walk us into what our topic is going to be for today.
Yeah, so we're for anybody who might be new, we're speaking about Healing America's Narratives. That's the book I published in 2022. The subtitle is The Feminine, the Masculine, and Our Collective National Shadow, Becoming More Fully Human. And for the last 2 months or so, we've been unpacking each of the elements of shadow that are identified in the book. I'll just name them quickly, and then we'll get into the one we're going to deal with today. So the elements of shadow that are identified in the history of the United States include ignorance, arrogance, fear, bigotry, violence, greed, excess, bullying, and untrustworthiness. And today we'll be taking a specific look at the idea of and the action of bullying. And as I describe it in the book, bullying refers to the abuse of power, whether it's physical, emotional, financial, political, even intellectual power, by anyone who appears to be or may actually be stronger than their victims. So again, it's the abuse of power, and the power can be physical, emotional, financial, political, any kind of power, intellectual. And often we know bullies bully. This is not always true, but they often bully because of their own inherent sense of insecurity or inferiority. So they try to make themselves feel bigger and better by taking advantage of someone else. So there's schoolyard bullying, there's online bullying with kids, and those are important elements that have been going on historically for years. But we're really speaking more about the bigger picture and historical picture of bullying, and it's inherent throughout the examples of shadow in the United States. From the European explorers turned colonizers who had the technological ability to bully the Africans, whom they then kidnapped, enslaved, and brought to the Americas. They did the same thing with the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Now we refer to them as Native Americans. Before either of those took place, the unhealthy masculine element in the European culture was bullying women. And that has continued over many iterations that we talk about in the book, right up to the current day. And both the left politically and the right politically bully each other or try to in various ways. So it's a really kind of ubiquitous practice in both the history and the current events of the country. So that's a brief overview of this idea of abusing various types of power, often because of a sense of inferiority or insecurity, and the consequent fear. I'm insecure. I feel inferior, so I'm going to go out there and show people that I'm really powerful. And bullying then is what happens.
Okay. Excellent topic as usual. Bring some initial questions to mind. One being, you said that bullying, and that's looking at it from an individual perspective, as far as framing my question is concerned. That person has the self-awareness to realize that they are insecure and have fear is what you're saying, as far as why they choose to be a bully and kind of exert their power or their perceived dominance over another person.
Yeah, good. Thank you for asking that question so I can clarify it. In my personal experience of bullying, and in my observation of bullying that's not directed at me, my sense is that no, that the bully isn't intentionally bullying because of an awareness of a sense of inferiority. They don't know that. They have this unconscious sense of inferiority or insecurity, and they bully in order to make themselves feel better. Another way to say it is they're finding a way to feed a hunger, to fill in a lack. There's something lacking in them, and they get some level of satisfaction by bullying someone else. So that's as close as I can come. I'm not saying there are no bullies who don't know exactly what they're doing, and there may be, but my experience of bullies often is they're unaware, they're unconscious, and it's a way that they can feel better about themselves. They get at least immediate gratification from the moment of bullying. I think if they were self-aware, they would be able to reflect and say, well, that doesn't really feel very good. Mm-hmm. And so my guess is they're not really self-aware, and their tendency to bully comes from an unconscious place. And that's anecdotal for me. I can't cite research that proves that.
You know, what's interesting is that I'm sure every presidential term, there's a modern theme that doesn't get discussed once a president leaves office as much, I should say. Not that it goes away, just doesn't dominate the headlines, just everyday news. I remember when Donald Trump was in office, and every first lady has her issue that she deals with. And I remember Melania Trump's issue was online bullying. And that was a dominant thing that she was really dealing with and giving her comments and her, I would say, putting up solutions on how to deal with online bullying. And I haven't heard much in the media talk about online bullying since he's left office. As though I know it hasn't gone away, but it's just interesting how the media doesn't talk about it as much, or it doesn't make it a part of our everyday conversations, and that it's an issue that needs to be dealt with and addressed as much.
Yeah, and so I'm glad you raised that particular example. Two things come up. One is there's an irony or maybe a paradox in that example, because for most of his adult life, pre-presidency, Donald Trump has operated as a bully with finances, primarily because he can get away with it. He can bully people through the legal system and through the use of his money. And so it's ironic that his wife would bring to the forefront the import of pushing back against online bullying. The online bullying has been a real problem for over a decade now with school children. Once they got a hold of those, their cell phones and everything on the media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, now TikTok, there's a lot of online abuse among children. I'm saying children pretty much, middle school and older, but probably some even younger. But that's the easiest kind of bullying, because you're not in the room with your victim. Like, it doesn't take as much courage to bully somebody online, and if you have a username that's not your real name, it's pretty much anonymous. I mean, you can find out who someone is. So it's hard to figure out what the satisfaction is there if it's not a sense of, that kind of meanness is not just a sense of kind of sticking out my own chest and feeling good about myself because I can do this to you. And then one last thing, which I actually speak to in the book, I think it was right after when Joe Biden was the president-elect, so after the November election, but before he was in office, um, a gentleman wrote an op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal where he criticized, in really kind of an immature way, um, Dr. Jill Biden, who has an EDD. She's been a community college professor for decades, and he was kind of mocking her for saying she should drop the doctor before her name, unless she's delivered a baby. People with PhDs and EDDs shouldn't refer to themselves as doctors. And this guy, has a bachelor's degree, pretty powerful literary figure. He was a writer and a professor at, I think, Northwestern University, has his degree from the University of Chicago. But he really mocked her, and the Wall Street Journal ran this thing. And it had, I included the example in the book, and it's to your point. And this was kind of an online bullying because it appeared both in the print and the digital version of the Wall Street Journal. And he never met her. He wasn't in a room with her. And he decided to pick her out of a crowd. He never criticized Dr. Henry Kissinger, who was the Secretary of State, who was a man. He never criticized Dr. Phil, who is, a television psychologist. He never criticized, and there are other male examples I could provide. So, for good or ill, I can't remember this guy's name, so I'm not going to give him any free press. But that was just an example where he just decided to write this to pick on the first lady elect in a way that she would have to write to the Wall Street Journal to defend herself. And was he jealous because she had stayed in school and got a master's degree and a doctorate? Or, I don't know. But it's that kind of, I can do this to you from here. And ha. I mean, I don't know. I think I grew up with the local neighborhood bullies, and I'm sure once or twice with, of my friends. I never picked on the ones who were bigger than I was. I probably picked on a couple of my friends who were smaller, a few times. But it was kind of a rite of passage for, a year or two, and then you were over it. But if you're still doing it in late adolescence and adulthood, and I'm not in any way excusing the earlier stuff, it's really problematic with adults.
Absolutely. I had never, and I remembered exactly the scenario you're talking about. And I thought about that when the guy did that, and I don't remember his name either. It's not really worth remembering as far as I'm concerned. Is that was the first time in my life that I heard someone question someone who had an ED doctorate and question their doctorate degree. And it was like, and to get publicity from that, to get mentioned for that, he has the right to say whatever he wants, but for the Wall Street Journal to do that shows the political bias. At the end of the day, it's like, who really cares what he thinks, when it really comes down to it. When you really put it in the context to say, why is this comment worthy of making it news to put out there against the First Lady? She's someone who is admired and respected in her area very well. So just because you may disagree with Joe Biden's politics, so it just shows you how people look for things to nitpick about other people, to your point, being a bully. And the Wall Street Journal allow themselves to allow him to use their platform as a way of being a bully. And that really got a lot of media, a lot of attention, a lot of people questioning that, like she's the only person ever to refer to herself as a doctor without having a medical degree. It's like the whole reason they call people doctors. It's like, so now you want to change that just as it relates to her only. The thing about online bullying that I find to be, and I need to learn a lot more, so let me make sure I make this statement before I make my next statement, is that it seems to be more about a choice than the in-person bullying that somebody may do to you, where you physically see a person. And I'm thinking about as you say, schoolyard bully in this context, or even a work bully, where someone kind of uses their position over you. But online, you can just choose to ignore that person. I mean, you can ignore that person who's attacking you. It's like when you put videos up, and I've read a lot of people. One of the things I really enjoy doing is I do my research around social media. As like I said, I watch YouTube videos, and if I like a video, I like to read the comments in the video to see how many people agree with me, how many people disagree with me, and kind of what their perspectives are, and why they may disagree with the subject matter of the video. And there's always people in in the comment section that's always, saying some derogatory statements, some statements attacking one person or another, insulting that person. And the great thing about online is you can just choose to ignore that. Now, as a person who's 54, who didn't grow up online, who chose to get online once I'm grown and my foundation is set mentally, my confidence is there, so I come from a different perspective than someone who may be a child who grows up online and looks at online and an identity of likes and friends in a whole different manner that I can, if I put it in that context, I can see where they may take that, choose, again, still a choice, but choose to take the online bullying and give it power. It's kind of like, I use this analogy just to make this point. It's kind of like if you live in a house and you have a mouse, and some people see a mouse and then they panic, scream, hop on the furniture, and you're giving this mouse all this power, and this mouse is more afraid of you, just trying to get out of that place as quickly as possible. The last thing the mouse is thinking about is attacking you, but you're giving that mouse all this power, at that moment. And that's how I liken that. It's like giving that bully that power. And I would love to hear how psychologists or consultants or coaches or counselors, more specifically, talk to children who choose to allow themselves to be online bullied. I know that's serious enough that people have actually committed suicide because of the fact they feel they've been online bullied. So I just kind of wanted to see what your thoughts were around the fact that, again, I look at it as a choice, and maybe I'm missing something in that perspective.
Yeah. No, I think that's an important point. I want to just make one more bullet point around. I think his name was Joseph Epstein. He was definitely Epstein, and not the Epstein who was accused of trafficking young girls and all that. So I think the guy's name was Joseph Epstein. But more importantly, one of the criticisms of Jill Biden, Dr. Biden, was that she had spent all these decades as a community college professor, and that her doctoral dissertation, and I forget the title of it, but it was around the importance of retention in community colleges. In other words, keeping students in. And so another piece of his bullying was, he was educated at the University of Chicago, which is considered one of the best universities in the country. He taught at Northwestern. I don't know if he was an adjunct or full-time, which is considered a good university. And so there's kind of this educational elitism for him to criticize her being at a community college, number one, and just dismissing the topic of retention at a community college as, how important could that be? And in fact, millions of Americans, some because they're poor, some because they're older and trying to go back to school, and some because their grades weren't that great in high school, rely on community colleges as a way into eventually getting a 4-year degree. And keeping these older students or these poorer students or these students who aren't great academically in school is a big part of the what's the word I'm looking for? The mission of community colleges. I mean, it should be the mission of any educational institution. But so she wrote about something that was really important if you care about that population. And it was dismissed by some guy from the University of Chicago who's so removed from that population. So there was this elitist, biased perspective that he brought to the whole criticism of her. And then the last piece was he said, you shouldn't use the doctor before your name unless you've delivered a body as a Freudian slip, unless you've delivered a baby. And what I wrote in the book was, well, in fact, she did deliver a baby. She's a mother, and she has a much more intimate relationship with that delivery than any MD does who facilitates it. So this guy struck out, on a lot of different, points. So we're done bullying him. Sorry. But to your point about the online piece, and especially the younger people, and how those of us who are a little bit older, we didn't grow up with social media, and you couldn't, if you wanted to bully somebody technologically, you had to call them up, and there was just one phone in the house, and probably the person you wanted to harass wasn't going to answer it but their mother or their father probably would, so it didn't work. But more seriously, kids who have grown up with cell phones, and more specifically with social media, don't have that more solid sense of identity that you were referring to, that you were able to develop before social media, that I was able to develop before it. And very often, their sole sense of identity is their online identity. That's why it's so powerful. So if they get bullied or criticized or mocked on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or whatever, they feel as though that is their image, that is their identity. They're being, that's what's getting hurt. Whereas if somebody criticizes something that I write or something that you say online, and I'll admit, if it's ridiculous and I can correct it, I might try, but I'm not worried about my identity. So I think the young folks, and by young, I don't know where to begin with that, but definitely, people born 95 and later, for sure. I mean, they were the ones who were kind of in middle school when phones and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter began to emerge. So they've had a computer in their pocket or in their hands their entire lives since middle school. And their identity very much is based on what appears online. And there is research on that, how unhealthy it is. And it's worse for girls because of body image. And so, and as they say, people only play their A sides, and only show their A sides online. And that's going back to the days of vinyl. Nobody, we're dating ourselves here. Most people don't talk about how they're struggling or suffering online. Some do, but most don't. And they show this vacation or this great photograph or this great meal they're eating or all these great things. And they rarely show the photograph of themselves, right when they get up in the morning. And I know I have my bags under my eyes. They're showing their best moments. And nobody's life is made up of best moments. We all suffer. And so when those best moments get criticized and you're young and you don't have a solid sense of self and identity, that can be traumatic for sure. And millions of kids deal with that every day.
Absolutely. You said something there that I think is really at the crux of what the real issue that we're facing here in America on a lot of levels, and that's our identity and how we see ourselves. Yeah. Because again, that goes back to choice, right? How you choose to see yourself, your identity is how you look at the world and how you perceive how the world's looking at you and dealing with you. So what I mean by that is this, and I've said this before in previous podcasts, that my identity has changed over the years as I've grown, as I matured, as Carl Jung talked about the maturity continuum of growing up. When you start off as an athlete, and then you move on to warrior, then statesman, then spirit. I remember my first identity was male. you're a boy. This is how boys behave. So that was all my identity. Everything was couched in that perspective. Then it moved on to you're a man. And then you move on to you're a black man. So then everything became my race, became my identity. I saw everything through that lens, as a black man lens, and that perspective, and how limiting that perspective is, until I got to the point where then my identity became my career. So now I'm looking at everything through my career. I'm an engineer. So, I got to look at things through that lens. And again, that's limiting as well. All that is limiting until you get to the point where you begin to look at yourself as your purpose. And that's how I look at myself now. And that's not limiting, because my purpose, even though the root of my purpose doesn't change, how I implement my purpose changes based on my wisdom and based on my growth. And so with that in mind, I would think our education system should take that into consideration and really focus on shaping the identity, because a lot of people in this country identify themselves as Democrats, and they stand on that, and they hate the other party, the Republican Party. And then, of course, the folks who look at themselves or identify themselves as Republicans hate the Democratic Party. And that, or you identify by your race, or again, your sexual orientation. See, those are divisive ways that causes folks to now hate that group. I hate you because you're a member of that group. And it's easier now to want to bully someone and justify the bullying nature or behavior because you attack the group. Well, that group deserves to be whatever ridicule, shame, pain, justification because of this, because they're white or they're males, or because they're gay, or because they're black, or because they're Jewish, or whatever you want to label in a particular group. And that, to me, is the crux of the matter. If we begin to start to say we identify ourselves as human beings who happen to be black, white, male, straight, gay, Jewish, or whatever other group you affiliate yourself with, that should not be your dominating identity. So I just really think that's the root of the issue. And now putting that in an online context, talk about that in the discussion that we're having, that to me is where you really have to be a parent and really make sure your child does not allow themselves to grow their identity online for that reason. Like, that has to be, everything you're doing as a parent should be focused on making sure your child does not, because now even children who are born at Generation Zs, if you're growing up online and they're literally being born, like you said, online, where they're, by the time they're 2, they have a profile online, and I'm sure their parents have shared their pictures and things that they've grown up, that you can't allow your son, your daughter, your child to let online shape their identity, because online, as we all know, is not real. And then my final piece, I know I'm saying a lot for you to throw at you. My final piece is, I've always used, and this is my own personal choice, and it won't change. Like, to me, social media is for business. I'm never going to share with you my meal I'm eating. I'm not going to take a picture of it. And this is where I'm eating. This, I'm not going to share with you my pictures of me out in the forest. And some people say that it's going to hurt, that harms my ability to resonate with certain people, because they want to see those parts of me beyond just business. And I'm fine with that. Mm-hmm. But where I'm going with this is that I've seen individuals post pictures of them in the hospital bed, and they're looking at their worst, and they're saying, pray for me. And I just can't relate at all to that. Like, I'm not going to, because where I'm going with this is, I had a friend of mine post on Facebook to say, I haven't been on Facebook for the last 30 days. And my true friends on Facebook reached out and asked me where I was and how I'm doing and why I haven't posted. And all the folks who did not, then I realized you're not truly my friend. And I'm like, really? It took that exercise for you to figure out who's you really, you thought all 500, all 1,500 people who are followers, or as Facebook calls them, friends, you really thought they were friends. So for me, folks who really take this online persona and identify themselves or put their identity so much, or is centered on how online is viewed or how they consider it online. I just think it's a dangerous game, it's a dangerous hole to allow yourself to fall into.
Yeah, I appreciate all that you unpacked there. And I want to go back to the beginning of what you said, because I mean, I think you were spot on. Another way to say it is I agree with you. So we could both be wrong, but I don't think we are. There's such an important difference between social roles, what we do in the world, maybe how we make our livings. I'm a teacher, I'm a lawyer, I'm a sanitation worker, I'm a nurse, whatever. I'm an entrepreneur. And our true identity, our deepest identity, our purpose. I mean, I refer to one of my teachers, Bill Plotkin, refers to each human's unique ecological niche. In other words, that place that each of us was born to occupy in the larger world. And then you actually named it, and that we could say that's your purpose. Another way to say that is, and the delivery systems change over time. So your unique ecological niche, your identity, your purpose, if you're really at the core of it, that's it. That's there. But the way to manifest it in the world might change, and those are delivery systems. And we tend in our culture to identify with the delivery systems. And this is what I do is who I am. And so I'm an accountant, I'm a plumber, I'm this, I'm that. And that's not to criticize the delivery systems, but that's different from identity. So I'm really glad you said that. And then the other thing you said, which is, I'm going to just use the language from the book for it. You said, we're all human beings first, not black, Jewish, male, female, gay, straight, etc. But that's the developmental move. And where most of us are stuck, and I'm just going to say this quickly out loud, we can be me-centric. It's all about me. I only care about myself. Most of us are stuck in a developmental stage that's us or group-centric. So I identify as white or black or Italian American or gay or straight or name it, Catholic, Jewish, or I'm a member of Congress or whatever. So I have these different groups I belong to, and I think that's my identity. But if you can move beyond the group identity, and that's what you spoke to directly, it's what I refer to in the book as an all of us identity or a species-based identity. Oh, you've got a nose and two eyes, and you walk upright if you're healthy, and you have one brain, and if we're lucky, 10 fingers and 10 toes. Humans. And once you get to that, where you look at anybody and you say, oh, member of the same species as me. So right now, as you and I are talking, the death toll from an earthquake in Morocco is up over 2,500 people, and a lot of the places are hard to get to. And those people are as human and need the same love and help as my best friends and family and you and I and anybody else we know. Same species. Now, I'm not going to get to Morocco. Neither are you. But again, it's that identity. So the sadness when something like that happens is similar, if not the same as the sadness when Lahaina burns on Maui, when there's a flood and people die, when there's the most recent hurricane in the United States. Because I'm identified with the species, not the geography, with the humanity, not the ethnicity or the citizenship. And the vast majority of the people on the planet are identified with some group or groups as opposed to with the larger humanity. And I would argue that is a foundational piece of why we suffer as much as we do. Mm-hmm. Removing that wouldn't make everything else go away. Global warming is real. The economic system is falling apart. It's not that it ever served everyone well. I mean, unconscious capitalism in a neoliberal democracy served certain people really well and other people not so well. Um, but if we just saw each other as equals and really felt that, not just could, imagine it, there'd be less of a chance of passing laws, of setting up businesses in a way that in fact bully less fortunate people. Because again, there's political bullying, there's economic bullying, there's financial bullying. Some of it is systemic. Some of it may have been unintentional. I don't know. I wouldn't pretend to know that. Some of it probably was intentional. But you named it, and I'm going to just repeat it again because I think it's so important that this identity piece, when I can see that I'm part of this human race, this human species, that makes it really hard to treat other people poorly. Now, I can't help all 8 billion people. You try to do that, you're going to not help anybody. But you can find a way within your sphere of influence and control to do more good than harm. And I think that's really what we're, in all of our conversations, really trying to get to. So did I address what you said?
Absolutely, you did, and just some other things I just want to add to quick because I know we're getting near the top of the hour.
Yeah.
And that is what I've learned, again, as a human being, and everyone who would go through the experience is how our perspective changes. So you might identify with your race, with your political party, with your religion, with your sexual orientation as much as you want. If you were to walk outside, open your front door, walk outside and look around, and one day you didn't see any other human beings, you saw nothing. You walk a couple of miles, you're not seeing any cars on the road. Or you don't see human beings in any cars on the road. You just realize that you're alone right now. When you finally do see someone down the road in a faint image, you're not going to care if they're black, white, straight, gay, male, female, Republican, Democrat. You're going to just be so happy to realize I'm not the only person on this planet anymore. I found some other human being that I can see. You're going to be so blessed and happy to see this person that you're not going to look at the group dynamic. So it's funny how, depending on the situations that we're in, our perspectives change.
Yeah.
And that's why, like I said before, I've used this, I know that's not on topic, but just to bring this point home, that you could be working on a $1 billion business deal that would change your life forever. And the day of you going to that meeting to get the check, to finalize the agreement, you wake up that morning and you can't see. That's your dominating thought there. You're not going to care about the $1 billion business deal that you've been working on for your whole life. You're going to be wondering, why can't I see? And I need to try to get this solved. So again, your perspective is going to be, that's going to be more important. To seeing that simple thing we take for granted every single day is going to be more important than that $1 billion deal that you thought you put your whole career, your whole life into completing. Same thing as my analogy I used earlier about being the only human in your peripheral, in your vantage point for a while until you see another human. And that to me is the perspective I try to humble myself to be in, is to put myself on a journey to become more fully human and lift myself above those, I call it lower level energy vibrations. Because to me, when you allow yourself to vibrate at that lower energy level, then your identity becomes about your race, your gender, your career, or whatever group dynamic that you put yourself in. So that to me, I believe, is the first step. And that's one of the things I want to ask you now as a segue in, because if you see yourself as a fully human, you don't even have the desire to be a bully. Like, I've never have a desire to say, I want to do some harm to someone else. That never even comes to my mind. It never really has. And so my question becomes now, how does a person who may become self-aware begin to remove themselves away from bullying type of behavior or thoughts along being a bully, whether it's online bully, schoolyard bully, or whatever the bullying type it may be?
Yeah, so great question. And I don't think there's a quick fix for that, because if you have that othering ingrained in your world. I'm this and they're that. It takes a while to break that down. But one way into it, first is just the intention, the awareness of it, and the intention. Oh, that is another human being. I've never met a person like that before, with that ethnicity, that skin color, that sexual orientation, but it's another human being. And probably the best, is that true? I'll say best. One of my favorites, probably a safe word to say it. If I had to lose various intellectual traits in my life, one of the ones I would hold on to for a long time is curiosity. So I would suggest is get and stay curious about this other person. Wonder, what is it like to be behind his or their eyes and see the world and experience things as they have experienced it and seen it and as they currently do. And one of the best ways to do that is to ask questions. But just get and stay curious about someone who appears to be other than you. And if you and listening is a big deal. The way to do it isn't telling them about you. Down the road, maybe you can do that. But if you really want to get to a point where you would never bully somebody again, get curious about other people's experience of the world and ask them and listen. And there may be some that you can't resonate with or disagree with for certain reasons, but you'll know more about him, her, or them as a human being. And even if you can't agree with them, and I don't agree with everybody. You don't wish them harm. You wouldn't deliberately abuse power to make their life worse. So I would say, curiosity is a really good beginning point, and I hope I never lose my curiosity about people and things in general.
Good point. Words of wisdom to live by, for sure. Well, now we reach a section of our show where we talk about an example of someone who we believe, whether past or present, who exhibit the fully human characteristic traits, so that folks can understand that what we're talking about is not an impossible goal. People have done it. People are currently doing it. And this is a path we can put ourselves on. And my example is going to be more focused on a group of individuals, not just one. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be people who are firemen or firewomen. And with this being the anniversary of 9/11, I've always admired fire people. Let me just use that term. Because to me, they run into danger. A lot of volunteers, folks who want to truly serve and save someone else and willing to put their lives at danger, their lives at risk in order to help someone else, to me, is something I always believe and admire and needs to be lifted up, and respect, I should say. It should be lifted up. And what bothers me in our society, and this is coming from someone who's a business person, particularly in real estate, how we don't make special consideration for folks who choose that career path. Mm-hmm. Like they should get easier loans. When I say easier loans, I mean their credit should be looked at as extensively. They should get lower interest rates. And they also should be able to move into neighborhoods where people should be welcoming them. Because a person who chooses that path, who chooses that career, that to me says a lot about who you are as an individual and the fact that you want to commit to, because it's not a high-paying career, but it's a very rewarding career. Of the folks who I know who are fire people, and I've asked, and they've shared with me what the feeling they get for being a fireman or a firewoman, and how it feels to be able to put themselves at danger and then help someone. That feeling, they say, is indescribable, and they love it. That's one of the reasons they choose that particular career path. So I just want to lift those individuals up today, particularly the ones that ran into the towers and ones who have passed as a result of that, but just honor them in the way they need to be honored. I wish as a society we would do more things, discounts, other ways to help those individuals who choose that path. Teachers as well, but particularly fire people today.
Yeah, great, beautiful. Thank you, King. Yeah, September 11th. Especially the towers. I mean, imagine it's one thing, you go up in a 10-story building, which would be incredibly difficult if it's burning. But to look at those structures, which were 110 stories, and carrying 75 pounds of equipment and going up by the stairs, I mean, God bless them and their families. So yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to mention one individual who I spent some time with this past weekend in a group of people, and her story is actually available online. She's received a couple of awards, so I'm not in any way breaking any confidentialities. But a good friend of mine who lives down in North Carolina now, her name is Joanna Burgess Stocks, and her name is online without the Stocks. Stocks is the hyphenated version of her husband's last name. So Joanna Burgess, but she had childhood cancer, and in the treatment for it, they were able to correct the cancer, but they damaged much of her bones and her inner organs with the radiation. And so gradually she had all kinds of problems with her hips and her bladder and all of these different things. So it's just as a kid, she really suffered. And she was blessed with having a wonderful family that loved her, especially her dad, but her family loved her. And because she was in hospitals a lot, she wanted to become a nurse, and she became a nurse. And she's both a wound and an ostomy nurse. So she has, she helps people that have had their bladders removed and different things removed, or have open sores on their body. And she became a patient advocate as well. So she's in a hospital, and she's both a nurse, and she makes sure the patients are being taken care of. And she's about, I think she's about 4'11", and she walks with a cane now, and she still has ongoing problems as she's in her 60s. And there are certain times in hospitals where, if like surgeons or even hospital administration see her coming down the hall, they run the opposite way because they know because she has a direct experience of what it's like to be a patient in a hospital her entire life, and she's a nurse, and she's really good at it. And just when I first met her, I thought she was like a superhero, because she has this great this great joy, and despite all of her issues, you never knew it. She just showed up, and she's had her hips replaced several times, and she's losing feeling in one leg but in private moments, she'll share her own fears and concerns about her health, because things keep changing in her body, as they do for all of us. But she got off to a kind of unfair start when she was a kid. But just in terms of being fully human and navigating the whole array of what it means to be human, when the physical body isn't cooperating, she's just like this exemplary example for me. And so that's for Joanna Burgess. If you hear this and you Google her name, you can probably read more about her and even hear her talk. But God bless Joanna.
Definitely, she sounds like a remarkable woman, and I'm going to definitely Google her name and look her up, because you are someone. If she's someone you admire, I know that you put a lot of thought into who you lift up, and listening to what you shared about her is something that has my interest. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Her up as well. Well, we reached the end of the show, Reggie, and another great day has passed. I appreciate again you for choosing the topics, for writing the book initially, choosing the topic, always being present, being a 10, bringing your positive energy to the show. It definitely helps out. It helps to continue to make my day, from a selfish perspective, move in a very positive direction, because we had this encounter that was positive and informative, as well as enjoyable, and entertaining, hopefully, for the listening audience. So listening audience, hopefully you enjoyed the show as much as I did. Again, we're doing our shows every Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've moved from Wednesday to Monday. And if you're hearing this as a replay on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, or Twitter, definitely post your comments. Let us know what you think about. Join our discussion. And until next Monday at 10 a.m., let's all continue to put ourselves on the path to become more fully human. Thank you.